I never thought that at 65, I'd be starting over. After 43 years of marriage, Robert passed away suddenly from a heart attack. We never had children, something I'd made peace with long ago, and I'd always assumed we'd grow old together in our beautiful colonial home in Fairfield, Connecticut, the one we'd saved for decades to buy. But when the will was read, my world collapsed for the second time. The house I'd lived in for 30 years, the one I'd lovingly decorated and maintained, wasn't coming to me. It had been sold months before Robert's death, a fact he'd somehow kept hidden. All I inherited was an old, dilapidated property on the outskirts of Portland, Maine, a place I'd never even heard him mention. Mrs. Eleanor Montgomery, the lawyer, Mr. Keller, said with practiced sympathy, sliding a yellowed deed across his polished mahogany desk, "This property on Willow Creek Road is now yours. It appears your husband purchased it nearly 40 years ago." My hands trembled as I took the document. There must be some mistake. Our savings account. "I'm afraid it's been nearly depleted," Mr. Keller said, avoiding my eyes. "The remaining balance of $4,237 has been transferred to your personal account." The room seemed to spin. Robert had been a successful financial advisor for over 30 years at Morgan Stanley. We had investments, retirement accounts, life insurance. Where had it all gone? "The life insurance policy?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Lapsed 6 months ago. Premium payments stopped." I sat in stunned silence as Mr. Keller continued explaining legalities I barely comprehended. How could Robert, meticulous Robert who color-coded our tax files and kept every receipt, have let our life insurance lapse? And where was our money? That night, alone in our rented condo, where we'd been temporarily staying, while Robert supposedly oversaw renovations on our main home, I poured myself a glass of Merlot and tried to make sense of it all. The condo, I discovered, was only leased for another 2 weeks. After 43 years of marriage, I was effectively homeless with only a small Social Security check and a mysterious old house in Maine to my name. 3 days later, I packed our sedan with what little I could fit, photo albums, clothes, a few sentimental items, and drove north. The 5-hour journey gave me too much time to think. Had I ever really known my husband? The man who kissed me goodbye each morning, who brought me wildflowers on random Tuesdays, who held me through 2 miscarriages in our early years. The same man who had apparently been draining our accounts and hiding it all from me. Willow Creek Road turned out to be a winding rural route about 20 minutes outside Portland. The GPS directed me to turn onto a gravel driveway, nearly hidden by overgrown bushes. Through the trees, I caught glimpses of what looked like a farmhouse, white with faded blue trim. A sagging front porch and shutters hanging askew. My heart sank as I parked in front of the house. This was it. This was what Robert had left me after a lifetime together. The place looked like it hadn't been maintained in years. Weeds had overtaken what might have once been a garden, and the roof was missing shingles in several places. With the key Mr. Keller had provided, I unlocked the front door. It swung open with a mournful creak, revealing a dusty interior frozen in time. Heavy curtains blocked most of the light, but I could make out sheet-covered furniture and picture frames on the walls. The air smelled of disuse and something else, a faint scent of perfume I didn't recognize. I fumbled for a light switch, but nothing happened. Of course, the electricity would have been turned off years ago. I opened curtains as I moved through the house, allowing the late afternoon sunlight to illuminate each room. The kitchen had appliances from the 1980s. The living room held a dated floral sofa and a tube television. A thick layer of dust covered everything. Upstairs I found 3 bedrooms. The master contained a queen bed with a faded quilt, dresser, and nightstands. The second was set up as an office with an ancient desktop computer. The third bedroom made me stop in my tracks. It was a nursery, pale yellow walls, ill. A wooden crib, a rocking chair in the corner with a handmade blanket draped over it, shelves filled with children's books and stuffed animals. My chest tightened as memories of my own lost pregnancies flooded back. Why would Robert own a house with a nursery? Was this some cruel joke? Or had he been planning to tell me about this place once? Perhaps as a surprise, before changing his mind. In a daze, I wandered back to the master bedroom and began opening drawers. They were empty except for the bottom drawer of the dresser. Inside was a photo album bound in burgundy leather. I took it to the bed and sat down, raising a small cloud of dust. The first page contained a wedding photo. Robert, much younger, in a simple suit. Beside him stood a beautiful woman with chestnut hair and a radiant smile. She wore a simple white dress and held a small bouquet of wildflowers. The woman wasn't me. My fingers trembled as I turned page after page. Robert and this unknown woman on a beach, in front of this very house, painting the shutters together. And then, my heart nearly stopped. The woman visibly pregnant, Robert's hand lovingly placed on her rounded belly. The next photos showed a baby girl with Robert's distinctive cleft chin, then a toddler blowing out birthday candles. A young girl starting school, holding Robert's hand. Dates were meticulously noted under each photo. The wedding had taken place 2 years before I met Robert. The child, Amanda, according to the captions, had been born a year before Robert proposed to me. The most recent photos showed Amanda as a teenager, perhaps 15 or 16. The room seemed to close in around me as 43 years of marriage disintegrated into lies. Robert, my Robert, had another family, a wife, a daughter. While I grieved our inability to have children, he had a child growing up in this house. I slammed the album shut and rushed to the bathroom, barely making it before I vomited. Afterward, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection in the spotted mirror. The face that looked back at me belonged to a stranger, a fool who had lived decades in blissful ignorance. Night was falling, and I had nowhere else to go. In a daze, I retrieved my suitcase from the car and made up the bed with sheets I found in a linen closet. They smelled musty but clean. Despite my exhaustion, sleep eluded me as questions raced through my mind. Who was this woman? Did she know about me? Was she still alive? And Amanda, where was she now? Most importantly, how had Robert maintained this secret for over 4 decades? All those business trips, those late nights at the office, those weekends away for financial conferences. Had he been coming here, to this family? As the first light of dawn filtered through the threadbare curtains, I made a decision. I would not be a victim. I would uncover every last secret Robert had kept, and I would find a way to confront this other family. They had taken my husband in life. I wouldn't let them erase me in his death. With newfound resolve, I got up and began to systematically search the house. The office seemed the most logical place to start. The computer was hopelessly outdated, but the desk drawers contained file folders meticulously labeled in Robert's unmistakable handwriting. The first folder contained property tax receipts for this house, paid faithfully every year. The second held utility bills addressed to Robert Montgomery. The third made my blood run cold. Birth certificates for Amanda Lynn Montgomery, born to Robert and Catherine Montgomery on May 12, 1981, and another for Thomas Robert Montgomery, born November 3, 1983. 2 children. Robert had 2 children I never knew about. Further files revealed school records, report cards, medical documents. Amanda had graduated high school in 1999, gone to the University of Maine, and became a veterinarian. Thomas, who appeared in later photos in the album I'd overlooked, had struggled academically but excelled in sports. He joined the Marines after high school. I found no death certificate for Catherine, which meant she might still be alive. Why then was the house abandoned? And where had our money gone, if not to maintain this place? The answer came in the last folder labeled Ocean View Care. Inside were invoices from an assisted living facility in Portland, Maine. The most recent, dated just a month before Robert's death, indicated payment of $7,150 for continued care of Catherine Montgomery. A handwritten note from someone named Dr. Levine mentioned advancing symptoms and considerations for memory care unit. So Catherine was alive but ill, possibly with Alzheimer's or dementia. And Robert had been using our retirement savings, draining our accounts, to pay for her care. I sat back in the dusty office chair, overwhelmed. The betrayal ran even deeper than I'd imagined. Not only had Robert hidden a family from me, but he'd been supporting them with money that should have secured my own future. And now I was left with nothing but this decaying house and unanswered questions. As I continued searching, I found more recent photos tucked into a desk drawer. Amanda with a husband and 2 small children, Robert's grandchildren. Thomas in his Marine uniform, looking so much like a young Robert that my chest ached. Holiday gatherings where Robert sat at the head of the table, carving a turkey, surrounded by his other family. The most recent photos were dated just 6 months before his death. Outside, the sun had fully risen, illuminating the neglected yard through grimy windows. I needed answers, and sitting in this house wouldn't provide them. I showered in the bathroom with its aging fixtures and lukewarm water, dressed, and headed into Portland. My first stop was the Ocean View Care Center, a sprawling facility overlooking Casco Bay. With its manicured grounds and upscale facade, I could see why it cost nearly $8,000 a month. In the elegant lobby, I approached the reception desk, my heart pounding. "I'm here to see Catherine Montgomery," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The young receptionist tapped at her computer. "Are you on her visitor list?" I hesitated only briefly. "I'm Eleanor Montgomery, Robert's wife." It wasn't technically a lie, though the receptionist's lack of surprise confirmed my suspicion that Robert had presented himself here as Catherine's devoted husband all along. "Of course, Mrs. Montgomery. I'm so sorry for your loss. We were all devastated to hear about Robert's passing. He was here almost every day." She checked her computer again. "Mrs. Catherine is in the garden right now for morning activities. I can have someone take you to her." Minutes later, I followed an aide through bright, airy corridors to a landscaped garden where elderly residents sat in clusters. Some were engaged in what appeared to be a painting class, while others simply enjoyed the sunshine. "There's Mrs. Montgomery," the aide said, pointing to a woman seated alone on a bench, staring at a bed of roses. Catherine Montgomery was still beautiful, even in her early 70s, with silver-streaked chestnut hair pulled back in a loose bun. She wore a lavender sweater despite the warm day, and had a vacant expression that changed to a bright smile when she saw me approaching. "Robert!" she called out, then frowned slightly. "No, you're not Robert." My practiced introduction died on my lips. Catherine clearly had significant cognitive impairment. "I'm Eleanor," I said simply, sitting beside her. "Eleanor," she repeated. "Are you new here? I don't remember you." "I'm just visiting." "You have lovely roses." "Robert planted those for me," she said, her face lighting up. "My husband. He brings me fresh flowers every Sunday. He should be here soon." My throat tightened. "The roses are beautiful." "We had roses at our wedding," Catherine continued, lost in memory. "A small ceremony at the house. Robert built that house for us, did you know? When we found out I was expecting Amanda, he said every child deserves a proper home." She smiled distantly. "He worked so hard for us. Always has, ever since college." College. Robert and I had met in our senior year at Boston University. Had he already been involved with Catherine then? "You have children?" I asked gently. "2, she beamed. "Amanda and Thomas. Amanda's a veterinarian now. She has twins, Sophie and James. And Thomas is a hero. He serves our country. They visit when they can, but they're so busy with their own lives. Her expression clouded. I forget things sometimes. Robert keeps track of everything for me. He's good with numbers, works at a bank in Boston. Each word was a fresh wound. While Robert had built this life with Catherine, he'd been building another with me in Connecticut. All those business trips to Boston over the decades, had he actually been coming to Maine? The distance was similar. Your husband sounds very devoted, I managed to say. 45 years this October, Catherine said proudly. Never missed an anniversary. Even when the children were small and money was tight, he always found a way to make it special. She leaned closer. He works in Connecticut during the week. You know, important job, but he comes home to us every weekend. The missing pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. Robert's weekend conferences that had become so frequent in recent years, his insistence on handling all our finances, the gradual depletion of our savings that he'd explained away as market downturns and reinvestments. Do you have family? Eleanor? Catherine asked innocently. The question caught me off guard. No, I said truthfully. No children. My husband recently passed away. Catherine reached for my hand with surprising strength. I'm so sorry, dear. That must be terribly lonely. You should come visit me again. I don't have many friends here. The genuine kindness in her voice was almost too much to bear. This woman, this stranger who had unwittingly shared my husband for decades, was offering me comfort. I'd like that, I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. As I left Ocean View an hour later, my anger had shifted. Catherine wasn't my enemy. She was another victim of Robert's deception. From what I could piece together, she likely had no idea about me. In her mind, Robert worked in Connecticut during the week and came home to Maine on weekends, the exact opposite of what he'd told me. But Amanda and Thomas were adults. Had they known about their father's double life? And if they did, why had they allowed it to continue? I drove back to the house on Willow Creek Road with a new determination. Robert had managed to compartmentalize his life for over 40 years, but in death, his carefully constructed worlds were colliding, and I needed to understand all of it if I had any hope of moving forward. Back at the house, I continued my search with renewed focus. In the kitchen, behind a loose baseboard I might never have noticed if not for a water stain drawing my attention, I found a metal lockbox. It had no key, but the rusted hinges gave way when I worked at them with a butter knife. Inside were documents Robert had clearly wanted to keep separate from the others. Bank statements from an account I'd never seen before. Life insurance policies, not the one that had lapsed for me, but active policies for Catherine, Amanda, and Thomas. And most damning of all, a second marriage certificate. Robert had legally married Catherine on October 4th, 1979, 2 years before we met. He had never divorced her, which meant my own marriage, my entire relationship with Robert, had been built on fraud from the very beginning. I wasn't legally his wife. I had no legal claim to anything of his. Suddenly, the paltry inheritance, the mysterious house, all made horrible sense. Robert had been trying, in his way, to provide for me without revealing his lifelong deception. I sat at the kitchen table clutching these documents, tears streaming down my face. 43 years of my life, gone. Wasted on a man who had been living a lie, who had stolen my chance at a genuine marriage, at perhaps finding someone who might have given me children of my own. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the dusty kitchen, I heard a car coming up the driveway. Quickly gathering the documents, I moved to the window. A blue Subaru had parked behind my sedan, and a woman about 40 was getting out, looking uncertainly at the house, even from a distance. I recognized her from the photos, Amanda, Robert's daughter. I had barely enough time to shove the documents back into their hiding place before a knock came at the front door. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed my hair and went to answer it. Amanda Montgomery looked even more like Robert in person. The same cleft chin, the same intense blue eyes. She wore a Portland Veterinary Clinic polo shirt and khaki pants, and her expression was a mixture of confusion and wariness. "Can I help you?" she asked, clearly assuming I was a realtor or some official. "This is private property." "I know," I said. "I'm Eleanor Montgomery. I'm Eleanor, Robert's wife." Her face drained of color, and she took an involuntary step back. "That's not possible. My mother is Robert Montgomery's wife." "Perhaps we should talk inside," I suggested, stepping back from the doorway. Amanda hesitated, then followed me into the house. I led her to the living room where I'd uncovered the furniture earlier that day. "Who are you really?" she demanded once we were seated. "Because my father was married to my mother for 45 years, until the day he died." "And I was married to him for 43, I replied evenly. "In Fairfield, Connecticut. He told me he was away on business when he came here." "What did he tell you about his weekdays?" "That he worked in finance in Connecticut," Amanda replied automatically. Then stopped, her expression shifting from anger to uncertainty. "This is crazy! You're lying!" I retrieved my purse and removed my wallet, handing her my driver's license and a photograph of Robert and me on our 40th anniversary cruise. Amanda stared at the evidence, her hands trembling slightly. "This can't be real," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. "I only learned about your mother yesterday," I told her, "when I inherited this house after his death. It was all he left me, despite our decades together. It seems he's been using our retirement savings to pay for your mother's care at Ocean View." At the mention of Ocean View, Amanda's defenses crumbled. She put her head in her hands. "Oh, God, all those years. He said he had a condo in Connecticut near his office. That's where he stayed during the week. He called every night, came home every weekend. He never missed a birthday, a school event, Christmas morning. How could he?" Her pain was so raw, so similar to my own, that I felt an unexpected connection to her. "I've been asking myself the same questions," I said quietly. "Did you know my mother has early onset Alzheimer's?" Amanda asked, looking up. "Diagnosed 5 years ago. Dad moved her to Ocean View when it became too difficult to care for her at home. But he visited constantly. She doesn't always recognize us anymore, but she always knew him, right until the end." "I saw her today," I admitted. "She seemed to think Robert would be visiting soon." Amanda wiped her eyes. "We haven't told her he's gone. The doctors advised against it, said the trauma could accelerate her decline. My brother and I have been taking turns visiting, pretending everything is normal." She shook her head. "Thomas is driving up from Virginia this weekend. He needs to hear this too." "Did you know?" I had to ask. "About me? About his other life?" "No," she said firmly, meeting my eyes. "Never. I would have told my mother. Confronted him." She paused, considering. But there were signs looking back. The strict schedule of when we could call him. How he never wanted us to visit him in Connecticut. Always said it was easier for him to come to us. She gestured around the house. When Mom got sick and moved to Ocean View, he said he was selling this place. Clearly that was another lie. We talked for hours as night fell completely, sharing stories of the same man who had somehow maintained 2 complete, separate lives for over 4 decades. The Robert she described, devoted father, patient little league coach, weekend handyman, seemed both familiar and alien to me. Her memories painted him as devoted family man, mine as a hard-working husband who traveled constantly for work, both real, both fabrications. "What will you do now?" Amanda finally asked. "About the house? About everything?" It was a question I'd been asking myself since discovering the truth. "I don't know," I admitted. Legally, it seems your mother is Robert's actual wife, so anything I thought I was entitled to likely belongs to her, including, ironically, this house. Amanda was silent for a moment. Mom doesn't need the house anymore. And from what you've told me, it sounds like Dad left you with almost nothing. She hesitated. I can't speak for Thomas, but I wouldn't contest if you wanted to sell this place. Her unexpected kindness brought fresh tears to my eyes. Thank you, I said. But I need to think about everything. This is all so overwhelming, she finished for me. I know. I feel like my entire childhood has been rewritten. She stood to leave. Thomas arrives Saturday morning. Would you be willing to meet with both of us? There's a cafe in Portland, Harper's on Commercial Street. Say 10 a.m. I agreed and walked her to her car. Before getting in, she turned to me. I'm sorry, she said simply, for what he did to both of us, to all of us. After she drove away, I returned to the silent house, my mind racing. The unfairness of it all was staggering. While Robert had enjoyed the love and devotion of two families, he had stolen from both of us. From me, the chance at an honest marriage. From Amanda and Thomas, the security of knowing their father was who they thought he was. The following day, I drove into Portland again and did something I hadn't anticipated. I visited Catherine once more. She didn't remember our previous conversation, but welcomed my company. We sat in the garden again, and she told me the same stories about Robert, about their wedding, about the house he'd built for them. But this time, I listened with different ears, noting the genuine love in her voice. Whatever Robert's deceptions, his relationship with Catherine appeared to have been built on real affection. On Saturday morning, I arrived at Harper's Cafe 15 minutes early, my nerves on edge. I recognized Thomas immediately when he entered with Amanda. Tall, military straight posture, the same cleft chin. His expression was guarded as Amanda made introductions, but he shook my hand firmly. So you're the reason Dad was always gone, he said bluntly once we were seated with coffee. Thomas, Amanda chided, but I held up my hand. It's okay, and no, I wasn't the reason. Your father's choices were the reason. I never knew about your family, never suspected. Thomas studied me, then nodded slightly. Fair enough. So what do you want from us? Nothing, I replied honestly. I'm just trying to make sense of my life, to understand the man I thought I knew, and to figure out what comes next. Our conversation was tense at first, but gradually eased as we shared stories and pieced together the elaborate framework of lies Robert had constructed. Thomas had resented his father's absences during his childhood, while Amanda had been closer to him. Both were struggling to reconcile the devoted father they'd known with the man who had lived a double life for decades. There's something else you should know, I told them, deciding complete honesty was the only way forward. I visited your mother again yesterday, and I learned that the money for her care at Ocean View is nearly depleted. There's enough for perhaps 3 more months. This news visibly distressed them. Dad said her care was covered for years, Thomas said, anger edging his voice. Said he'd set aside investments specifically for that. I believe he intended to, I said. But maintaining 2 households, 2 families, for decades, must have strained even his resources. When your mother's illness accelerated, he started drawing from our retirement savings. I think he assumed he had more time to figure things out. So what happens to Mom? Amanda asked, the worry clear in her eyes. I took a deep breath. I've been thinking about that. The house on Willow Creek Road is legally mine now, according to the will. If I sell it, I could help contribute to your mother's care. They both stared at me in disbelief. Why would you do that? Thomas asked. After what Dad did to you? Because your mother is innocent in all this, just as we are, I said. And because at 65, I need to decide what kind of person I want to be for whatever time I have left. I don't want to be bitter. I don't want Robert's deceptions to define the rest of my life. The conversation shifted then, becoming more practical. Thomas, it turned out, had contacts in real estate from his time in Virginia. Amanda knew the local Portland market. Together we formulated a plan to list the house, which, despite its condition, sat on a valuable piece of land near a growing area of Portland. By the time we parted, something unexpected had formed between the three of us. Not friendship exactly, but a fragile alliance born of shared betrayal and a determination to move forward with dignity. Over the next 2 months, I stayed in the house while overseeing minor repairs to make it more marketable. Amanda visited regularly, sometimes bringing her twins, Sophie and James, who were curious about this new aunt who had appeared in their lives. Thomas called weekly from Virginia, where he was stationed, checking on progress and offering advice. When the house sold for considerably more than I'd expected, $375,000 thanks to the valuable land, I fulfilled my promise. Half the proceeds went into a trust for Catherine's continued care at Ocean View, managed jointly by Amanda and Thomas. The other half gave me the fresh start I desperately needed. I decided not to return to Connecticut with all its painful memories. Instead, I found a small apartment in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, close enough to visit Catherine occasionally and to maintain my tentative relationship with Robert's children and grandchildren, but far enough away to build something new for myself. On the 1-year anniversary of Robert's death, Amanda, Thomas, and I met at a small cemetery in Portland where he had been buried. Catherine's condition had deteriorated to the point where she rarely recognized anyone, living increasingly in a past where Robert was still a young husband building her a house on Willow Creek Road. Standing at his grave, I felt not the burning anger that had consumed me initially, but a complicated mix of grief, regret, and surprisingly, gratitude. Robert's deception had cost me dearly, but his death had given me an unexpected second family and the chance to redefine myself beyond being simply someone's wife. "I've been thinking about forgiveness," Amanda said quietly as we stood there. "Not for Dad's sake, but for ours. I don't know if I'll ever understand why he did what he did, but I can't keep carrying this anger." "Sometimes there are no satisfying answers," I replied, thinking of the countless hours I'd spent trying to comprehend how the man I'd loved could have lived such a monumental lie. Maybe the best we can do is learn from it and choose a different path for ourselves. Thomas, less inclined toward philosophical reflection, simply placed a hand on each of our shoulders. "Family comes in strange forms sometimes," he said. "But I'm glad we found each other, even if it took this to make it happen." As we walked away from the grave, I realized the truth in his words. Robert's betrayal had broken the life I thought I had, but from those fragments something unexpected had emerged, not a replacement for what was lost, but something new and genuine. A family formed not by marriage or blood, but by shared experience and conscious choice. That evening in my Portsmouth apartment, I opened a new journal and began to write my story, not as a victim of deception, but as a woman who had found her strength, her voice, and her own path forward in the most unlikely of circumstances. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was mine to create. One honest day at a time. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.